Yes, we are live. Hello and welcome to Product Lessons, a podcast channel where we talk to product leaders from all over the world and learn from them how they build and manage world class software products. Just to reiterate, this podcast is available both on YouTube and Spotify and SoundCloud, and the links are there in the description, so you don't have to remember. Just click on those description and hit subscribe. Today, I am thrilled to have with me have this interview because I'm talking to one of my bosses, Lakshmanan. He was my boss at Autodesk Singapore, one of the best product companies in the world till date. And today, he's the director of product design at Zendesk. Again, a great product company we all know. At Autodesk, he managed quite a big team of product designers, researchers, and a big documentation team at one time as well. Now, while I know Lux is a great functional expert in his field, what I remember more of him is for his leadership skills, and that created such an impression on me that I still remember him for the kind of leader, kind of a boss he was. Whenever my wife and I discuss boss issues at home after a bad day, I often tell her that, oh, Lux would never do that. So this is like till today. So what makes him a great boss, which is very different from others? I have identified a few. So he was the first manager I encountered in my at that time. It was like around 7 years or 8 years of work experience. But this was the first time I encountered a manager who was extremely polite and respectful towards team members. Before that, I was working in India before, never had such polite managers, never knew that managers should be polite. So that was a breath of fresh air. So he was never throwing his weight around. I still remember when he would ask me to get into a meeting room. He would just send me a message saying, he would never say, Ravi, come over. It was always, Ravi, whenever you are ready, we meet. And these little things you learn in life and that stick with you later in life. And today I do the same with my team when I lead people. So his politeness did not stop him from giving firm feedback when needed. And I have received quite some firm feedback, and I have grown because of that feedback. At Autodesk, we had a great feedback culture as well. So that was two. And the third is, I remember him for his limitless patience and complete attention to each and every team member. I still remember we had an open office, and no matter what he was doing, whenever a team member came to his desk, and I know a lot of members came to his desk also the day, he would just give him his full ear and attention, complete attention, and that was quite admirable. So some of these traits have rubbed on to me consciously or unconsciously, and that is the test of a true leader when others want to emulate you. And that is why I'm so excited to have him with me today. So with that, let's welcome Laksh. Hi, Laksh. Welcome to Product Lessons. How are you doing today?
Hey, Ravi. Thanks very much for that introduction. That was so kind of you. I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm doing great as well. So very, very excited, Laksh, to talk to you about this. Recently, I have very deep collaboration with designers, and that's when I remembered you. And I thought, okay, let's do something and learn how you have how you have applied this over the years, and not just talk on strategic topics. We will cover strategic design topics, but we also want to go a little deeper on tactical level, especially dependence and collaboration with product managers as well. So that's why I thought you were the best person. So while we are talking about your leadership traits, and I intended to ask this later at the last, but since I mentioned a few traits about your leadership, why don't we understand that a little deeply? How would you explain your leadership philosophy, if I may ask?
So I would prefer to walk the talk, in the sense, whatever I preach, I would prefer to follow that for myself. And it's a very simple philosophy, I would say, but it's hard to follow. You can easily give advice, but it's hard to follow the same advice. So I think that's what I keep in mind, and I don't try to be pretentious. When in the early part of my career, there used to be this discomfort when you don't know details, or when you don't know, you have this expectation that as a manager you need to know everything. And I realized that no, you don't need to know everything. I mean,
Mhm.
just hire the right team members who are suitable for the business,
Right.
and give them the opportunities and the platform so that they can do well. I think that is what you need to do as a manager, and you don't need to know every tiny details of the business, of the domain, or of the design.
Right.
So when I remove that pressure out of myself, then I can just be myself and
Right.
be a normal team member with everyone else. So I
Right.
think those are things that I keep in mind. So I was with Autodesk for a long time,
Yeah.
and then when I moved to Zendesk, it was not an easy decision. After 19 years at Autodesk,
Wow.
when you want to switch over, it's like starting from scratch. So some of these principles actually helped me. And coincidentally, uh, when I had like 1 week break between Autodesk and Zendesk, I happened to meet one of my ex-colleagues.
Mm.
Uh, he's with I forgot the name of the. He's one of those big biopharma companies in Hyderabad. He's a chief HR officer, Suresh Anubolu. I don't know if you have heard of him. So he
Yes, honorable. The name sounds very familiar. I'll have to check out. Yeah.
we were colleagues. He was in sales, I was in technical support, so
Uh,
together we used to make a lot of Autodesk meet a lot of Autodesk customers.
got it.
So when he visited Singapore that week, he was saying, when you are in a new job, for the first 1 year, everyone will advise you, don't get offended, just take all the advice and absorb them,
Right.
because you are learning. I think that was a good advice, a timely advice, I would say, when I switched. So yeah, be a good learner, be yourself, treat others how you want to be, how you yourself want to be treated. I think those are simple things that I try to remember.
Right. Yeah. But simple things is not very common. So yeah, your simple things stand out. So thanks for being the kind of leader you are. So let's talk about a little bit about your career trajectory. You mentioned Autodesk 19 years. So would that summarize your career, Autodesk and Zendesk? And if that is all, maybe you could talk about how does a regular day or a regular week look like at Zendesk at present, being a US, being a product director there, product design director.
Sure, sure. So in terms of career, I started in a field that has nothing to do with computers or digital or anything. Um, I studied mechanical engineering, so my initial part of the career was all around mechanical engineering. I was working for a company that manufactured radiators in India, and then I worked for a pressure die casting die manufacturing company. I was a die designer. So that's where I got to use AutoCAD, and then I really liked the application. And then you know what, I should make this my main career. So that's how I started. That was my intro to Autodesk products, and eventually I started working for Autodesk in technical support.
Right. So
So
at Zendesk, how does your week look like?
at Zendesk, if you take my week, so I think uh, a big part of my time is spent on talking to my team members, understanding where they are, what the hurdles they're facing, how are the projects going. And then a big part of my time is also spent coordinating with product people. So I talk to product managers, product directors. So currently, my focus area at Zendesk is chat messaging, some aspects of messaging. There are like other product design leaders as well, and support. Support is the core product for Zendesk. So these are the product areas that I work on. So I talk to product managers and product directors and all these product lines as well.
Nice.
Um, so a lot of time is spent on, yeah, product roadmap, where we are heading, what is the plan for next quarter or next 9 months. And there's also a significant amount of time spent on design reviews. Zendesk is one organization where design quality is expected to be the best, like at a very high bar. So there's a lot of attention to design quality and reviews and critiquing and so on. So yeah, that's how roughly my week would look like.
Excellent. Yeah. So yeah, Zendesk is known to be a great product company. I've always admired. I once applied for a role at Zendesk in Singapore after Autodesk. I realized I was not ready for that role. That's why I did not qualify. So let's begin with design as a leadership topic. As I said, let's start with strategy. So what does design leadership mean to you in an organization? And I had the same conversation last time I interviewed Ranjit, who is the director at Informatica US. I asked him the same question, and he had his own idea. So if I ask you what is design leadership, how would you explain that?
Okay, so when there is a design representation in the executive leadership or in the C staff, then I think that is the ideal situation that an organization could be in, and that is where the design leadership is at its best, I would say. Most of the time, it doesn't happen because CEOs don't have time for design. I mean, you will see engineering, you will see product managers or product management folks reporting into the CEO or C staff, but not design. So when an organization puts a lot of emphasis on design, then there is a very high chance that they have a design representation in the C-suite. So to me, that is the ideal situation, I would say.
And what is your own personal opinion? So increasingly we see at Autodesk, we hired, at that time, we had hired somebody from Facebook to become VP of
Yes,
design,
yes.
isn't it? I'm
Yeah,
forgetting.
yeah. Her name is Maria Judice. So
Yes, Maria Judice.
she was reporting into Amar, not exactly to Carl, like not
Yeah,
exactly to CEO, but
yeah,
like one level down. Yeah.
right,
So that was definitely that definitely meant a lot, because it tells you how much the organization is willing to invest in design,
right,
right? So at Zendesk is pretty close, I would say. So we used to have a chief creative officer reporting into our CEO, but with the recent reorg, it got shuffled a little bit.
right,
But Zendesk is definitely an organization where design gets a lot of say at the table, I would say.
right.
And if you see an organization that proudly, most of the organizations, when they pitch their products, they talk about the features and talk about how much they can do and how much they can achieve.
Yeah,
But when you see an organization pitching their experience and their design as a key
right,
selling point, then that tells a lot about that organization. So
right,
Zendesk is one company where they definitely try to sell the experience part. It's not just a product, but
right,
you can be up and running. It's like very quick, and
right,
out of the box in few hours you can have your support setup done.
right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, and because I also feel because software is becoming a commodity, there are so many competitors in the marketplace. How do you stand out? Because you cannot stand out competing on features, on feature set, feature parity. Because you build one feature today, in the next quarter, your competitor, if it's a good feature, your competitor will follow this. So you cannot fight with the features. Eventually, the winner is the one who delivers best experience, best usability, and that is why design-led companies have become a thing in the last 10 years, isn't it? It all started from Apple, and then it has just caught, the wave has caught, and that's why design leadership has become so prominent, and that's why people are hiring VPs and SVPs. So yeah, but how would you think a UX or a design function, how do you measure the impact of a UX or a design function in the larger organization?
There are, I think it depends. Like there are different models available. I don't remember the name. I think McKinsey has some sort of index. They actually measure an organization's design maturity and the impact of design in an organization. They ask a series of questions like right from whether the organization has design representation in the C staff, right from that to a series of questions that I couldn't immediately recollect. But there are different models available. McKinsey has one, and then there is this organization called DMI, Design Management Institute.
Right.
They have something called DVI, Design Value Index. So they try to put some dollars and cents to design to measure. So each organization can actually come up with their own models, but finally, what matters is, what are those differentiating factors, and how much does design contribute to the revenue and the profits, right? So there are models available, and and I was about to say something. I'll let you know when I recollect.
So with all your experience, which you might have learned on the job, and some you would have reflected upon, what according to you is a high performing UX organization? Okay, and when I say UX organization, I mean in terms of the structure. I mean in terms of UX, UI, user research mix. So maybe if you can shed some light on what according to you is a high performing UX organization.
I think the first hurdle to cross in many organizations is the other functions, right? Engineering or product or any other function. They should understand the value of design, right? In smaller organizations or in organizations where it's predominantly development driven, it's actually a very difficult task. So you first need to cross that hurdle of trying to justify design. Like, why is an experience good experience? Like, sometimes I used to remember at Autodesk, like long time ago, where there is a lot of emphasis on features. We want to get the features done so that because competitors are doing, we need to catch up, or we need to stay ahead, so we need to do more features. So there are times when you cut corners on like design, or you go for some sort of like average design, not exactly going for those North Star type of design, right? So you need to first cross that hurdle. If an organization reaches a point where everyone understands that experience is not something that the design team owns, experience is a collective ownership of everyone, engineering, product, and design. I think that is more of an organization thing. Definitely, the design team should lead this, but this is more of an organization thing. The organization should get that maturity, that you don't need to try and fight and try to justify design. Once you cross that, then comes the question of a high performing design team, in my view. So again, it depends on the organization. I can speak for Zendesk at the moment. So we have the product design organization that has designers, researchers, content designers, and we have a significant design systems team as well. So they come up with all the patterns and standards for Zendesk design, and we also have a design community team, a smaller organization, which was a surprise when I joined Zendesk, because usually all these community activities are done by someone who's already a designer or a researcher. They just do it as an extra thing that they have interest in. But in Zendesk, they have like dedicated people who do community stuff, reaching out to other designers outside the organization, getting the designers within the organization to contribute to design as a practice, and help and coach people outside design, outside Zendesk. So
but this is under the umbrella of Zendesk, or it's a
this is under the umbrella of, they are like regular employees of Zendesk design organization, and
so
they're
help
called
us
community managers.
So help me understand. Very, very fascinating. So this is an official Zendesk initiative to create a design community which interacts with other designers. Is that how it is?
Not exactly to create a design community, but these are community managers who act as a bridge between Zendesk design and the outside world. It could be outside design community or anyone who is in need of design expertise. So these community managers, they actually amplify the work of Zendesk design.
Uh,
Uh, and they also bring outside knowledge into Zendesk designers, like organize speakers, bring in some coaches, and get them to interact with Zendesk designers and researchers and content
nice,
designers,
nice.
or vice versa as well. And they are the ones who actually monitor all the blogs, and they do a lot of community stuff, like sometimes volunteering, because sometimes volunteering is not always packing rice and doing physical stuff, right?
Yeah,
It could be knowledge based volunteering, so they organize that as well. So these are different functions. In my view, this is sort of a structure that Zendesk has, and I really like and admire how they have organized the design organization. And I find that to be really working pretty well. Um, and of course, there are like smaller design teams within the larger design team which work with different product lines. Like you have designers who work on support, who work on chat, and who work on messaging and talk and so on. So they all work with different product partners. But finally, all the designers are under one reporting structure,
hmm,
uh, reporting into the VP, who in turn reports into SVP.
got it. So the design community is still fascinating me. Is this public? Like, can we search for design community? Because if it is,
Yeah. Go ahead and search for Alexa. Alexa is our community manager. She's a very known face. You can search in LinkedIn or in, like, Google, Alexa Zendesk community manager. So I mean, if you look at all her posts and all her initiatives, I think she has a presence in Medium as well. She usually brings together all the designers, sometimes write articles, and
so Alexa Harasimchuk, is that
yeah,
right?
I don't know how to say the second name, but yes, yeah, she's the one actually.
Okay, and I'm just sharing it on screen. Okay, so she's the one, and she's the one who is taking the initiative to promote this design community.
Yeah.
So I'm supposing this came from ground up, isn't it? This might not have been Zendesk or some
Yes,
initiative.
you're right. Yeah, Alexa was a designer. I mean, before I joined Zendesk, I heard Alexa was a designer,
Got
and then she had this special interest in doing sharing sessions on YouTube and Medium and so on, and
nice,
then um, and then I think that paved way for Zendesk to create a community manager position, and she became a community manager.
nice.
Yeah, so
Yeah, so she says, I lead design community for Zendesk Design, where I help build teams, foster connections, and design memorable experiences. On YouTube, I create videos about design, careers in tech. So this is such a great thing, because I know for sure there are people, very passionate employees, who have, like, I am doing this podcast on a weekend, but if I could get support of my organization to do it more actively and more visibly, and it actually brings back the benefit, because I strongly believe you can never hire all the best talent in the world within your organization. Okay, so there is going to be some learning outside the organization, and this is an amazing model where it is backed by also by the organization. So that is
yeah,
quite
yeah.
very.
That is definitely one valid point, in the sense this has actually helped us create visibility about Zendesk design among all the budding designers and like a lot of other people. So it also helps you create a good funnel of good designers when
Yeah,
you are trying to
hiring. Yeah,
hire, right? So yeah, definitely, that's definitely a valid point, and it also gives a lot of satisfaction, also a platform for the designers who actually don't have the time to really think about how do I share, what do I share, and so on.
yeah,
Alexa takes care of all of that. Like,
right.
so she takes care of all the pain that you need to deal with, but you can give your contribution, and she'll make sure that it gets published and it gets read, and it reaches so many thousands of designers.
Nice. You mentioned about content designers. What is that role about? Is it
So
about
content,
UX writing?
yes. Not exactly UX writing, but the this is slightly different from what it used to be at Autodesk. At Autodesk we had content designers who also wrote help content.
Right.
Not only that, not only the help documentation, but they also contributed to what goes on in the UI,
Right.
and what is the language and what is the tone that we are using on the UI, right? So the content designers at Zendesk purely focus on the design on the UI part. That's all. Documentation is done by a different documentation team.
Right.
So they partner with product managers and product designers, make sure that as much as designers play with pixels and controls and drop downs, content designers purely play with words, voice, and tone to
Right.
make sure that we convey the right intent of design for our features.
Got it. So it is under the design function. It is not a marketing function, no?
It is not. It is under product design. But the documentation, yes, yeah, documentation is outside design, and it's handled by the other functions. Yeah.
And what is so? What I really learned about it, Autodesk, and admired was you just mentioned, right? So one of the things that you mentioned is awareness of design, and design is a responsibility across the board, not just for designers. And so one of the best things that had happened at Autodesk was doing this design thinking Luma workshops, which is not meant only for designers, but a lot of developers also, I think, were getting trained. I think the Lean UX book was distributed almost to everybody, isn't it? So,
True, true.
so those were, I think, those first steps towards making an entire organization aware of design processes. Help me understand the user research, and I have always struggled with. It's often a budget issues because at Autodesk, I clearly remember when we had. I was working with a great user researcher. I'm forgetting her name. She came from Harvard. Um, so usually you don't have limitless budget for user research, right? So what we used to do is at that time we used to prioritize important projects and assign user research effort to those projects. So is this something similar here at Zendesk, or do you have a big user research team? Or how is user research budgeted for all the product initiative?
It is very similar at Zendesk as well, in the sense you don't have so many researchers as compared to designers. Even designers ourselves, like if you look at the ratio, it's not in a great shape. We are still trying to hire and get approvals for additional headcounts and so on.
Right.
And research is even worse, I would say. Like, I don't remember exactly. Probably the research team should be around like 8 to 10 people worldwide, all together, all the researchers put together,
Right.
or a design team of 100 members, like around
Right.
100-member design team, out of which 10 people are researchers. Definitely not enough. Looking at the number of projects and number of products that are being built, number of strategic initiatives that are happening,
Right.
researchers, what we have is definitely not enough. There's always a constant ask for additional researchers to be hired.
Right.
However, one thing that is slightly different compared to Autodesk and Zendesk was in Zendesk, it is sort of made very clear that designers own research.
Hmm.
So as a designer, you are responsible for the research of your own features. So There are certain avenues that the research team has created.
Right.
So a few of them would be like, I'll give one example. We have something called rolling studies.
Rolling studies.
Yeah. So every 2 weeks or every 3 weeks, customer support agents or admins, like customer support admins, are all queued up. And for sure, every 2 weeks or 3 weeks, there will be like 8 or 10 agents available for the study. So what you need to do is, as a designer, go block a time. Like, okay, I want 15, 20 minutes in that 1 hour session to get validations for my feature. So what happens is it takes a lot of pressure of recruiting, looking for the right agents, and so on. You don't need to worry about all of those. You will get some external people coming into that research session.
So these are not customer support agents of Zendesk, but these are customers.
Yeah, these are our customers. Like, I mean,
Yes.
our customers are support agents because Zendesk is
Yeah,
support,
yeah, of course. Yes.
right?
No, I,
So
I thought I thought there is another channel, right, which are actually customer support agents
sure,
who are taking customer problems, and that
I
is also a very precious channel because you get to hear the customer problems. It was, and I got exposed. I was not exposed to this in Autodesk, but at Teamweaver in Germany, I used to sit with the support agents just to hear customer complaints because that was also a good. But you are talking about because Zendesk
our
is
customers.
building software for customer support
That's
agents. Got it.
Yeah. So our customers, yeah, basically it's our customers. So every 2 weeks or every 3 weeks, there are like 8 to 10 customers already scheduled. So as designers, you go block some time and you can get validations done. And then there are
What do you
avenues.
mean by validations done? So you
So imagine you come up with like 2 or 3 designs. You want to know which ones the customers prefer and why would they prefer, right? So you can actually show a prototype, give a quick context. You know what, you're trying to solve a ticket and this is what is happening. And would you prefer this UI and interaction, or would you prefer the other one? And why would you prefer? And it's like very quick. You get some validations done. That's what I mean by validation.
at
We
Autodesk
also,
we had customer councils. Okay, is this in that form where there are dedicated customers signed up for customer councils or not?
no, this is slightly different. So customer councils are like a pool of 100 or 200 customers.
Yes.
You post a question on the forum, and
Right.
then they try to reply, and then there are conversations going on. It's like a private discussion forum, customer
Right.
council. But this
Right.
one is not. This one is like live customers coming in. I mean, on Zoom or
Yeah.
one of those tools, and then they look at your prototype, they answer questions. So this is one avenue, and there is usertesting.com, where you can actually post your designs and get some feedback on your designs. So these are
Get
things
some.
that are, yeah, these are things that are owned by designers, and they're expected to own this and run this. However, researchers will be allocated to projects if it is a strategic initiative. It's a big initiative. A lot of discovery research needs to be done. So
Right.
then a researcher partners with designer and product manager, and then runs the whole research as a project. Um, yeah, so that's the different. I know Autodesk had aspects of this, but I find it a lot more structured in Zendesk, where designers are responsible for research. It's not
Right.
it's not researchers. Yeah.
Right. The user researcher that I was working for, I'm so bad with names. She had this concept of don't just give the fish, teach how to fish. That
Yeah.
means teach the rest of the team how to do user research. She was very good, and I think that worked. Okay, so do you also train your designers to do effective user
Research.
research? Okay.
Yeah. The,
Do, do,
the yeah.
do you have a researcher in your team as well, or do you?
No, so here I manage only the designers. I don't manage researchers or content designers.
Got it.
However, we have researchers assigned to projects. Like if you're looking at support, then there is someone who is actually helping you out on support. Someone from research helping you out on support. Yeah.
Got it. So let's talk about that resources being assigned to product. So you said that you have your own functional team reporting to to the management, design management. However, do you have dedicated designers allotted to dedicated products, or they mix gradually according to resource pool and what is needed at any given point of time?
Generally, we have designers dedicated to product areas. So you have X number of designers working on Zendesk support and X number of designers working on chat and so on. So they pick up initiatives within chat or within support. So there's a little bit of back and forth, but it's all product areas. Yeah, that's how we have it in Zendesk. We don't have designers like totally going from product X to product Y altogether, because you need to learn the domain and you need to learn the product a little bit. So that level of shifting is not there, but within product, yes.
Got it. So I would also want to understand the cadence and alignment with the product development sprints. I think last week we briefly messaged each other about that. So I wanted to understand how do product designers manage their work, because they are attached to product teams, and hopefully I think Zendesk also has the philosophy of sprints and squads and stuff like that, right?
Yeah, Scrum team. Yeah.
Scrum teams. So do designers also manage their work within the sprints of the team, or do they have their own backlog, and how do they match both these backlog? Maybe some light into that will be helpful.
Yeah, sure. So we do have a backlog just for the design team. It is not mixed with the backlog that the engineering teams are working on. So the engineering teams have their own backlog. However, the design team's backlog is more for get a sense of where the projects are, what the resourcing is. If someone is overloaded, someone has some bandwidth to pick up any new projects. That is what the intention is, not exactly to manage it like a sprint. While the sprint itself has a backlog of tasks, there may be design tasks specifically, like, okay, verify a design once it's implemented. That gets assigned to a designer. So those sort of tasks are managed in the Scrum team's backlog. However, the design team's backlog of, okay, do a research, do some exploration, come up with few iterations of, those are not mixed with the engineering backlog. They are always kept separate.
But how do you create that backlog? Is it driven driven by the product manager's roadmap, or
Yes.
how does it? What are your inputs for design, for your backlog, for design backlog?
So what at Zendesk, what we have is we have quarterly planning. So every quarter we actually look at how does the next 9 months look like. So that sort of informs you what the current priority is, what are some of those top projects, what are the ones that we can support. I mean, we in a sense design can support, and the ones that design cannot support. So we set expectations with product management and engineering. These are the projects that are going to be funded by design, and these are the projects that we cannot pick up this quarter. So the backlog that I'm talking about will actually be based on whatever inputs we get from product on what the top priorities are. Accordingly, we will get designers assigned, and that's how our backlog would look like. There is always a situation where we don't have enough designers. I mean, unfortunately. So there are projects that we cannot pick up sometimes and needs to wait until they get designers assigned. The rough philosophy that I have in mind is anything more than 2 projects, when you assign to a designer, it becomes too much context switching for them. So we try our best to keep between 2 to 3 initiatives max. It could be like one big project and then one small project, because it's very hard for designers to actually context switch. Once you are in a particular project, you want to do that wholeheartedly. So yeah. So did I answer your question in terms of
Yes.
the backlog? Yeah.
Yeah. So you answered my question. So what happens to the projects which you cannot assign designers? Do they go ahead without design support with the knowledge of developers, or how does it work?
Yeah, sometimes we just provide consulting, like just probably like just give some quick input and so on, and then try to like the lower priority, not so much of customer facing sort of projects. Those are the ones usually may not get funded. So we try to manage with, we have the concept of office hours, like basically like every week there are a few hours we spend answer design questions and so on. So we try to manage with that. But if there are significant initiatives, the projects will wait till a designer gets assigned.
Got
Uh,
it.
we definitely don't want engineers and product managers to do the design and ship the product. That part we are very clear. So we just need to time the projects accordingly.
Got it. So you have your own backlog, but this backlog, like, do you follow Jira by any
Yes,
chance?
we use Jira for our backlog.
So this backlog for design is, do they have Jira stories? Is that the unit?
Yeah, yeah. Those are Jira stories with
Tasks.
different phases, like tasks, yeah, and then also different phases, uh, like exploration, currently in progress, and then in evaluation or something under
It's a
research or
Kanban.
something.
So
Yeah,
it's a Kanban board in the form of a
it's
Kanban
sort
board.
of a Kanban board. Yeah.
And are these linked to the board of the developer sprints or
No,
no?
they're not. They are not. They are
They're
totally
not.
independent.
Okay.
However, we do have links to what the initiative is, like where the designs are, what is the product requirements, and so on. So
Right.
you click on a story, you get to know what is that story about, what for which initiative we are working on,
Right.
but it is nowhere related to the engineering backlog.
Right. So these backlog items are for initiatives. How much ahead of time? Say you say that every quarterly you do this. You want to see how does the next 9 months look like. But if a development team is going to be working on this new feature, how much ahead is the designer team be ready with their design work for that feature?
Again, it depends on the size of the project.
Say a major feature, a major epic uh,
It would
component.
be, yeah, it could be easily like um, the designers and product managers would probably start like maybe 1 quarter before, or maybe 2 quarters sometimes. If there are larger initiatives, it needs a lot of alignment, a lot of discovery. Then, yeah, 1 to 2 quarters, 3 to 6 months before designers start on it. And definitely engineering would be involved in terms of feasibility study and so on, but the entire scrum team may not be involved for that 6 months.
Yeah,
And by the time the scrum team gets it, it will be like after 6 months, then they'll get the designs and they'll start working on it.
got it. So here is the interesting part. Usually, help me understand the collaboration between the product management and the designers, right? So I strongly think that product managers are also a equal partner in the discovery of things. Okay, so they have the business case ready, and they kick off maybe with a workshop where I think designers are invited, and where they come up with this proposal. Maybe you could run through a kickoff project which is going to happen in the next 2 quarters, and how does that information is passed on to you, and then how do you collaborate? How does PM and UX collaborate to bring this to shape?
So usually the requirements could come from product managers themselves. They're observing what's going on in the market. They realize that something is going to become a priority, or something that we need to do to stay ahead of our competition and so on. So it could come from product managers, it could come from leadership, or it could come from product marketing. Like they usually update the team on trends, what's going on in the market.
Right.
So it could be one of those sources. And the first thing that we expect our product managers to come up with is something called a one pager. So this one pager has information on what is the business problem that we are trying to solve, what sort of impact are we going to create,
Right.
what are the product areas that we are touching, what are the dependencies, and
Right.
like it has a whole set of questions that gets answered in that one pager.
Right.
And once we have the one pager, then they'll start socializing it with different stakeholders. And
Right.
uh, once we get the thumbs up, okay, yeah, this is something that we are going to go ahead. Then
Thumbs up from whom? Is that
from
a
the
product
leadership,
or something?
from the leadership, yeah,
Yeah.
from the product leadership or like overall leadership, we commit to it. Then we identify a design partner
Right.
to work with the product manager.
Right.
And then so together they start laying things down on a board to find out what exactly the problem is. The whole lot of research happens at that time.
Right.
Um, yeah, and so that's when all the workshops, alignment, building, and everything happens. Zendesk is one company where um, our offerings are like sort of diced and sliced and are owned by different teams in different parts of the world. Like we have
Right.
teams in Montreal, we have teams in Melbourne and
Right.
Singapore and San Francisco. So make sure we build alignment, sort out all the dependencies. So that initial part is quite intense and involved, and get things sorted out. So that's once we get a clear understanding of the problem, and once we get a clear understanding of all the technical dependencies and so on, then we try to get some research done as well simultaneously,
Right.
to come up with a fair understanding of what that MVP would look like.
Right.
And are we solving the right problem? What is MVP? So we have this process called, I don't know if you know, there is something called double diamond that the
Double
design.
diamond. Yes. Double diamond is. Yeah, I know of it. It is. I mean, this is what I meant by discovery, isn't it? And double diamond has become the standard for all companies now. So whoever
Sure.
I talk to,
Autodesk
usually,
uses double diamond.
yeah.
Zendesk, we sort of derived something called triple diamond out of double diamond.
Okay.
So I mean, you can do a Google and find out. So Zendesk triple diamond, there is an article available. It's available on if you're a user of Miro. Miro has a Zendesk template which has a triple diamond template.
Nice. Yeah, Miro has all kinds of templates, so they are
Yes.
very updated with anything that is new. So double diamond also. So the thing is, I was exposed to design thinking through Luma, that we got trained. And when I see, okay, double diamond is actually a representation of Luma, so that's how of design thinking. But okay, do you want to shed some light on triple diamond?
Yeah, triple diamond is a detailed version of double diamond, I would say. The first diamond is all about discovery.
Yeah.
And by the end of the first diamond, we have clarity on what exactly the problem that we are going to solve.
Right.
So that is the first diamond in which product managers and designers work together, do a lot of workshop research and so on, and get clarity on the problem that we want to solve. Then comes the solutioning part, the second diamond. So that's the part where they iterate and come look at all possible solutions. And by the end of the second diamond, we have identified to 80-90%, this is the solution that we want to go with.
Right.
And then the last diamond is all about execution. That's when engineering comes into picture. They pick up your designs and they start coding. And along the way, the remaining 10-20% gets sorted out with some research and validations and so on. Then by the end of third diamond, you have a complete feature that's done. Right? So that is the
complete feature is the increment post MVP. Is that true?
No, this would be the MVP itself.
MVP. Got it.
This would be the MVP itself, right? So that is the triple diamond. But I do want to call out that there are times when we do design-led features, like design-led initiatives, which is like totally coming from the design team, not from leadership, not from marketing or not from product management. Sometimes
Mm.
design sees an opportunity. You know what? We can actually unify all of these experiences. We have like so disjointed experiences. Like
Right, right, right.
there are
Yeah,
5 or 6 ways we can do the same thing,
right.
and we develop a blind spot because we are used to it. We have been doing it for 10 years now, right? So we have a couple of design led features like that as well. So in
Mm.
that case it will be slightly different. Design would actually go and pitch it with product and try to get a buy-in,
Got it.
uh,
Yeah.
and then once you get a product partner, then the process remains the same, so we go through the process.
Nice, nice. So let's talk about the MVP because I have some conflicts there. But since you mentioned about Miro coming up with the triple diamond, because whenever Miro comes up with a template, that is a seal of approval that, hey, you know what, any new framework any new model is now official. So this is how I feel. Just makes it more popular if there is a yeah. So let's talk about MVP. So the thing that I struggle with is when I work with designers, when they have a scope, they do an end-to-end design of of the entire product. But as a product manager, I struggle because this is not my MVP. Okay, this is the entire fleshed out scope, and uh, and I completely understand the designer's point of view because they cannot work in MVP because they have to lay out the land completely on how they see it. But then what becomes a problem is to understand, okay, out of this entire full blown design, how do we pick the pieces for our MVP? So how do you do your designers also flesh out the entire design at one go and then pick the boxes for the MVP? Do you have an answer to that?
I wouldn't say that we first lay down the complete experience or complete like end-to-end workflow and then pick MVP.
Right.
No, in my view, these conversations actually, when you do discovery and research and so on, you automatically start building an understanding of what your MVP should look like, without worrying about what the final end goal after 4 years or 5 years would look like. So, um, so so in my view, it's like two tracks. One is what is that immediately that you want to do that is getting flushed out. At the same time, what is this long term goal that you're trying to achieve as well? That is also getting flushed out. Um, the reason why we want that end to end, that long term vision to be laid down is because it'll actually help you inform some of those smaller decisions that you're making for your MVP today. Um, because you don't want to take a path in your immediate solution that actually prevents you from achieving your long-term goal, right?
I had the same conversation with Ranjit in the previous podcast, and he said that it is actually helpful to have the complete picture because if you think designers will think incrementally and add pieces, it will become very choppy and it will not be a unified design. So it's actually helpful to have the entire canvas. But I could not get to the next topic, which is okay. How do you then build a MVP? So yeah. So what do you do then?
So I think MVP, we should not wait for this entire thing to be built to pick pieces out of it to make MVP, in my view. MVP is should not, I do get very uncomfortable when someone says, okay, give me a UI mockup so that I can decide like a MVP, or if I can decide what needs to be done. I think
Right.
that should be totally driven from all the research and understanding from that you're building from talking to people and whatever you're finding
Right.
out in your research. So yeah, so I would say no. In my view, we should not pick MVP from the final goal. Rather, MVP should be decided what we want to address now.
Mm.
And the end-to-end experience is only to actually help you make some of those critical decisions with your MVP, so that after you complete your MVP, when you're heading to version 2, then you should not scratch your head that, what, I've made some decisions that is
Yes.
not going to lead me to where I want to, right? So
Yes.
we don't want that to happen. That is the only thing.
Right. So help me understand the definition of MVP. So I'll tell you there are two definitions, and one is definitely flawed in my opinion because for my understanding of MVP is to reduce the risk you need to ship the lowest increment as fast as possible to your customer to get early feedback, to see if you are on the right track, and then be guided by them to say, hey, this looks good, could you also add this, because then this completes my entire use case. Then because you are getting this guidance from your customers, you're building it with them, and then they tell you or define your increment 2 or version 2. Of course, some organizations are not very happy. They still want to have their MVP fully fleshed out, or at least to a level where they are comfortable. Otherwise, the sales sometimes is not happy. So, what is your definition of an MVP? And in some organizations, I know that the MVP, the sales people say, hey, these customers, they're looking for these. This is a must-have item in this, and otherwise we are not happy that you ship to our customers. What would be your definition of
I think,
MVP?
yeah, my definition, in my view, MVP should be a minimum viable experience, not the minimum viable product. Like if you're going to just look at what you want to achieve in terms of feature, then you'll end up shipping a crappy experience, but you'll definitely check the boxes for your MVP. Like you want to do X, Y, Z, yes, you can definitely do, but in a much more compromised way where people are not going to enjoy. They may not even pick up what you have shipped. So, in my view, it should be a minimum a viable experience, I would say. Like so, ship enough so that people will definitely be excited to actually give it a try and also give you feedback, right? Don't only look from your own organization's perspective where I want to do 20 things but my MVP is 4. I don't care how it's going to turn up. I'm going to just do these 4 things for my MVP. No one is going to try it, no one is going to use it.
Got it.
So look for there should be some business value where if people want to use what you're shipping,
Right.
we should get something out of it. There should be some incentive for them to really try. They're not purchasing or they're not using your software to purely to give feedback. I know that is what you want, right? But
That's a
we
good
should,
one.
yeah, but we should also put their perspective in mind, and that should be our MVP, rather than just purely looking at the features or the number of features.
That's a very good point. So your customers are not there to give you feedback to your design team. If you want that kind of a feedback, a crappy MVP, maybe use the one that you mentioned. What was that?
Rolling
Rolling.
study.
Yeah, maybe take a bunch of customers and hand over the designs to them to give you intermediate feedback. Maybe that is, instead of doing a general rollout of a crappy feature. Okay, I get that. Cool. Yeah. So okay. So that the design and the PMs work on this, and you have this. So you have this collaborative effort, and you come up with a design. Yeah. And you said that this is at least a quarter or sometimes 2 quarters ahead of time. So you do all this discovery. You have an initial design ready, and you save it, and then when the sprint is picked for the teams to be allotted to this project or to work on this feature, then everything comes together. This is how it is, right?
Yeah, that's right. So definitely engineering leads would be involved early on to
Right.
make sure that the technical feasibility is validated. Product architects, or product and engineering architects are all involved early on if it's a big initiative, so
Right.
that when the Scrum team tries to pick up, they are not in for a surprise, and we don't have designs that no one can code, right? So we don't want that to happen. So in that 3 to 6 months time, some of those critical stakeholders are already involved from engineering.
Right.
Yeah, when you reach that mark where your designs are ready, Scrum team picks up, then all the open questions, we have answers for them.
Right. So so I believe in this concept of empowered autonomous teams where they are not given these set of things that, hey, this is the feature, we have the design, we know what to do, just code. I believe in a collaborative building of a feature. with inputs also from the developers, instead of asking them, we have done all the homework for you, just sit and code. What is your experience of involving also the developers in the design process, where there is a shared sketching, and of course led by the functional expert, the designer? What Because I really not don't feel comfortable where all the work is done and give it to them and just you.
Yeah, I completely agree. I completely agree. I think that should not be the case. If you're going to do that, um, that is definitely important to. It is definitely important to involve engineering early on. And in my own experience, I have seen sometimes developers give awesome ideas. Um,
Always.
yeah, when I used to do hands-on design on AutoCAD Mechanical, like
Right.
years ago, I enjoyed working with this team in Slovakia.
Right.
I don't know if you may not have worked with them. I think because you were on the AutoCAD
Yeah,
team.
I was earlier. Yeah.
So we had a few people like Peter Kalia, like few people, and these guys are amazing, right? You just go and share an idea. They
Right.
don't talk much. They just mostly absorb.
Yeah.
And then the next time you meet, they would have done some like quick proof of concept, and they'd actually gone above and beyond what you asked for, and they give you
Yeah.
new ideas, which you can take back to your designs.
Right.
So I totally agree, and there's a lot of value in involving everyone. So when I talk,
How do you do that? Because if all the design work is done 2 quarters ahead and you have only involved the leads and the architects, maybe, how do you do that? Because your design is ready, no?
yeah, so your 3 to 6 months that involving leads, and when I say leads, not exactly people with the title leads, engineering
Okay.
leads, but obviously in that phase, there are people who are passionate about something, who are knowledgeable about something. So from the engineering team, so you start involving them early on as well. So it's
Okay.
not a total surprise for the engineering team. So
Got it.
all the people who would contribute, they would have already been consulted, they would have already
Got
been
it.
involved.
That's a good one.
And I do know designers who actually um, specifically set up time with specific engineers because they get good, rich feedback.
Yeah.
But if there are workshop sort of things happening, we'll definitely bring them in as well because it's just a 2 hours, 3 hours commitment and you get
Right.
feedback from them.
That's a, yeah, that plugs the gap of how I was thinking. Excellent. Um, let's talk about version 2. Okay, this is the classic problem of most companies. People ship version 1, and many companies forget about improving it. Many companies forget about tracking whether the version 1 was good enough, because in all likelihood version 1 will never be good enough, because you have shipped an MVP. That's why it's called a minimum viable product, and there has to be some holes that needs to be plugged to make it complete. So help us understand what has been your guiding principle and rules of thumb to ensure that you don't forget with version 1, and maybe version 2 and version 3 are taken care of, and how do you manage that on the roadmap?
I think when you put down your product roadmap and when you plan your MVP and then version 2 and version 3 and so on, one thing that teams could probably do is consciously is what do we want to learn when you ship each and every version, and how are you going to incorporate into your next version? I think we usually don't think about it. When we release MVP, yeah, everyone celebrates and and, uh, and probably you continue your assumptions on your version 2, or maybe don't even talk about version 2, right? So all of those have happened, I've seen. So the part that we can do better, all the organizations can do better, is have a clear goal of what we want to learn from what we have shipped,
Right.
and how do we want to incorporate in your next version. It's easy to say, but it's very difficult to implement. And
Right.
also having the right instrumentations in your product.
Right.
If you really want to learn something, then you need to make sure you instrument it at the right places. If
Right.
not, you're continuing to make guesses and assumptions
Right.
when you are designing your version 2 or future versions, right?
Right.
So yeah, there's a lot of follow-up that's needed from both design and product after
Right.
you ship your first version, so
Right.
that you really deliver a good version 2 and improve upon your MVP. Um, yeah, that's what comes to my mind immediately when you talk about making version 2 a little bit better.
No, but how do you? Because there is a pressure uh, to meet quarterly roadmaps. You have next set of features. Who is the one raising his hand saying that, hey, we shipped something last quarter and we got feedback and we need to put it back on the roadmap because we need to improve it and release version 2. How does that happen?
As I think all the stakeholders should own this, but I think the ownership is a little bit more on the product side. I think
Yeah, product side.
product
Yeah,
managers should definitely not release the pedal. They should continue to press on the pedal and try to move forward. But again, there are practical difficulties. Like organization has its own plan. Like they want to. Most of the organizations, they always go after those shiny balls. Like what is the next shiny thing? If it also depends on the organization culture, right? So if you start something, you better complete it properly before you jump to something new.
right,
So there's a mix of factors, but I think a bigger part of it is owned by product management. They
right.
should try and bring it to a decent version 2 or version 3, of course, along with design and everyone else partnership.
Yeah, so this is the difference between output mentality and outcome mentality, isn't it? Because output is, oh, how many features did you ship this quarter? Outcome is how many problems you actually solved that you got validation from the customer saying that, hey, thanks, we enjoyed this feature. And this is something that at Teamweaver we changed the culture. So we have a Kanban board where we invite. So we have a product board where the leadership is invited, and every 3 weeks, so the Kanban board shows the flow of your features. So we never move a feature or an epic to done. We have something called in the wild. Okay, so what does in the wild mean? In the wild is when the feature is released but it is not done. So we have something called the done ritual, where the product managers, product owners, they have to show evidence and give a presentation on what is the status of this feature after a month or 2 months, what were the success metrics identified, and how have the features performed, and then report whether they met the success criteria or not. And based on that feedback, it is either moved to done or put back on the roadmap to be iterated to meet the success criteria. Of course, sometimes your assumptions were wrong and you did not meet the success criteria. At that time, you have to take the hard call to pull that feature back. Otherwise, what happens is over time you have a piling bunch of non-performing features, just taking code base and increasing technical debt, isn't it? So that was one of our solid culture that was actually my initiative, and that actually is still running, and I have tried to incorporate in other organizations that I've worked. So yeah, just wanted to share that.
That's definitely a very effective way of handling this, I would say. Yeah,
Because nobody can escape. Their
yeah,
Kanban board is there, it's in the wild, it cannot move to done without reporting to the stakeholders. So,
no,
and no feature can escape, so there's no oversight at all. So you have to report, you have to state the facts, you have to, as you said, instrumentation, you have to get the analytics and stuff like that. All right. So we talked about iterating on a shift feature. We talked about MVPs. Let's talk about the UX tools and frameworks that you have used over the years, and maybe in your current organization. Also, you talked about Triple Diamond. User-centered design is still, I mean, it cannot go away out of fashion. User-centered design is the principle, right? So maybe you could shed some principles, some frameworks and tools that you follow within your team and stuff like, or within across the board in Zendesk.
sure. Yeah, so Triple Diamond, I've already spoken about. Triple Diamond and Double Diamond are definitely great user-centered design tools, I would say. Sometimes uh, we tend to unconsciously follow Triple Diamond or Double Diamond.
Yeah.
So I always think that when you try to book a holiday destination, like you want to book a trip to some place, um, uh, you unconsciously you are actually doing a double diamond. Like you go broad, look at all the possible places that you can visit, and then you have certain criteria, and then you try to converge and narrow down on, oh yeah, so
Yeah.
this is what I want to do,
Yeah. It
right?
looks very commonsensical. Yes. Yeah.
Yes, yeah. So the double diamond or the triple diamond has basically created, they've just put whatever we
Structure. Yeah.
generally do into a nice framework.
Yeah.
So if you can actually consciously refer back to these models and then just take stock of where you are, what you want to do, I think that will be good. So that is something that we use definitely. Um, there are like certain rituals and processes that we use. I think that will definitely help design organizations. Is a lot of emphasis on critiquing and design reviews, and sometimes they don't happen enough. So. Uh, Critiquing is one way of actually getting feedback on your designs, and the design review process actually also helps you build the quality of your designs. So those are two things that we use at Zendesk. What else?
How do you do it? What is
So
critiquing?
for critic, there are different ways you can do critic. But the model that we use at Zendesk is like every location, every geography, like APAC or EMEA or Americas, there are sizable number of designers, like 20, 30 designers in each one of these locations. So they meet on a weekly basis, like somewhere between 90 minutes, 1 hour to 90 minutes. And then people share their designs and get feedback from a broad range of designers. Sometimes designers from totally different product, they're also there. And they actually help you uncover some of those blind spots that you may have developed as you are so close to your own design. You may not have seen those pitfalls.
Like,
Uh,
do you like present your design and people just give feedback? Is that how it
Yes,
is?
yes, yeah,
Okay.
yeah. So we basically go in and say that, okay, 30 minutes, I've blocked 30 minutes, I'm going to show my design. This is a problem I'm trying to solve. And this is the type of feedback that I'm expecting from you. Like, don't give design on copy or content because content designer has not yet worked on it. I'm looking for feedback only on the interactions and the UI patterns. So give me feedback on that. And
Or
then
heuristic principles, basic heuristic principles are met or not? No.
either that or it could be like we have our own design systems. Sometimes there may be a better UI pattern that you can use than what you have today in your design, and there are designers who actually chip in and give you that feedback.
Got
So
it.
yeah, it could be all aspects of design. It could be workflows, UI patterns, content. It could be anything.
Okay.
So that is
There's a
critical.
discussion. There's a discussion, and then you take notes and then you incorporate them. Okay.
Yes, yeah, 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 all of it, yeah. So it's just that it's a broader group. Sometimes it could be like anywhere between 8 to 10 people, or it could be even more. And we use Miro, we use the tools that most other design organizations use. We use Figma, we use Miro. People go give their comments and feedback right on the board itself, on the design itself.
And is it up to the designer to decide whether he wants to act on that feedback or not? Because sometimes a design can be just opinions. Okay, different people have different opinions, and there is no right or wrong way. So how do you ensure that the designer is actually incorporating, or does he have the freedom to make take the
uh,
call?
they have they have the freedom to decide which ones to accept, which ones not to accept,
Got
because
it.
they have certain reasons why they made some design decisions.
Right.
But people do give feedback because they may not have all the context that the designer has, so they may give feedback.
Right.
So it's up to the designer to pick it up.
And
And design,
yeah,
yeah,
go ahead. Go ahead.
design reviews is a little bit more granular, a little bit more closer. So design reviews are done with the designers involved within that product team in a much more close knit environment, where other designers like methodically look at all your designs and get into the details and give feedback. Sometimes product managers also are involved in the design reviews, like giving feedback. So there are two levels of these filters that your design goes through. to make sure that we ship the right thing, we design the right thing, and we solve the right problem.
Got it. Okay.
So
How
those are the
often?
rituals. Yeah.
So design review is with the entire team, the developers and everybody. No.
Design reviews is primarily with designers, sometimes with design product managers and designers.
Got it. Got it. Um, Excellent. My next question is on.
I am yet to complete.
Oh, sure.
So,
Yeah. Good.
yeah, yeah. Sorry. I talked about the rituals. I talked about the triple diamond or double diamond, the user-centered design process,
Right.
and using some form of design thinking methodology, like Luma you mentioned, right?
Yeah.
So, I like Luma. I'm a certified trainer and a practitioner and a facilitator.
Right.
So I really like Luma, and there are many other similar design thinking methods available in the market. So one of those methods are also very useful in your design organization. So those are things like you can use them as a toolbox, and you can pick out certain methods from it, and then try to brainstorming or build alignment or co-create and come up with designs. It could be any one of those.
Got it. What about the UX tools? Because UX tools change like every season, every year. There is a new tool which becomes the flavor of the season. Like Figma was not known 5 years ago. Today, Figma is like, I do not know. Do you also use Figma?
Yeah, Zendesk is on Figma. We were on Sketch and Abstract like
Yes.
until a few months ago, and then slowly shifted to Figma.
Right.
So now we are on Figma. Yeah, I agree. Like every 3-4 years, the design tools change.
I was
That's
a big fan of Sketch since I have a Mac. I'm a Mac guy, so I actually paid a lot of money. To use. I'm not a designer by any stretch of imagination, but I loved Sketch. I learned Sketch. Amarjit, our common colleague, he helped me learn Sketch a bit. So I used to design my CVs and everything on Sketch and small animation. And then I became a big fan of Figma. So Figma was great. What any other tools that you use? Like what other tools? What are your tool sets that you use other than Figma?
These are the primary tools, actually.
Okay.
Occasionally, we use Adobe products, but again, that's very, very rare. You want to do some icons or something,
Right.
then you get into one of those Adobe products. But primarily for designers who are doing UI and interactions, it's Figma is good enough. It has everything. You can build prototypes that actually work like a real thing.
So what about low fidelity prototypes? Even for that, Figma is used, or you have like.
So we have design systems, I told you, and we have a huge library of all our design elements already available in Figma. So
Got
it
it.
becomes a lot more easier to just drag and drop and assemble your screen in
Okay.
minutes rather than doing a low fidelity. But
Okay.
sometimes we may need a low fidelity prototype. I know people do like hand-drawn sketches.
Yes.
Miro has UI, like low fidelity UI as well.
Got it.
So you can use, we use one of those.
Got it. Excellent. Um, Help us understand your principles of building with customers. So I think you already mentioned about rolling studies. So that is how you co-create with customers, right? Or are there other ways that you also build with customers?
Rolling studies, primarily we don't co-create. We all, because we like, it's like a 1 hour session if I'm not wrong, and
Okay.
then probably 2 or 3 designers block time, like either 20, 20, 23 designers, or it could be like 2:15 and then 1:30 or something like that. So
Right.
so you really cannot do a lot. So what happens in rolling studies, rolling studies is we showcase design, explain the context, and get feedback. There is not much time for co-creation.
Right.
But we do co-create. Like sometimes we schedule sessions with customers, give them a canvas and give them all the UI elements and ask them, if you were to like do your UI, how would it look like?
Right.
And then get them to like assemble it. Sometimes you get bright ideas, sometimes you get not so great ideas.
Right.
But that is definitely one way we do co-creation. You remember at Autodesk, we have Autodesk University, like every
Yes.
year.
AU. Yeah.
Yeah, so that was one big venue for co-creation I have seen. I know designers go there, they print all their canvas, UI elements, everything, cut it
Artifacts.
out and bring it, yeah, and put it on the table and ask people to actually build their UI right in front of them and
Yeah.
try to understand why they built it in a certain way.
Right.
So yeah, there are multiple methods that we can do.
But is there a way that they can be through the entire journey of building the feature end to end, or that is realistically difficult?
It's a bit difficult because they need to commit their time as well, right? Because
Right.
for example, you'll at least go back to them 3 times, 2, 3 times to get
Right.
feedback on how things are going. But I'm not saying it's not possible. I think I've seen with customer council at Autodesk, that is always a possibility. You can always go back and go back to the same set of customers and, hey, based on your feedback, I've improved. How does it look like?
Right.
We can always do that, but practically it's not possible for all projects.
Right.
Yeah.
Excellent. Let's dig a little deeper into collaboration between design and product management function. So, what do you think is the best way of collaboration between them? First of all, how do you? So there is a concept of product discovery, which is all about. So once the one pager that you mentioned, so different companies have different. So at Autodesk, clearly remember with Micah, we used to write initiative briefs. So when I was with him for Mac, he wrote initiative briefs, and then the project kicks off. So the entire product discovery is actually an entire process, right? Where you validate the customer needs, you find the jobs to be done, you identify what customer segment, what are his pain points, what and stuff like that. So it's a lot of effort. You create your own hypothesis and stuff like that. How is that effort shared between product management and the design team or the user research team? Is it a shared ownership, or somebody like is more accountable to discovery? How does it work? What's the best way of collaboration between UX and PM?
I think it's a shared ownership. In my view, it is a shared ownership, and the best way to partner, not only in discovery but in any phase of your development, the best way to partner is, I think the first thing is mutual respect and understanding. They should know each other well. If not, it creates all sort of problems. So I think that is when that is set. What I think I've seen different product managers. So you cannot say, okay, a product manager should have X, Y, Z, and then he's a great product manager to partner with. Design. I wouldn't say that. It's a bit of a balance, I would say. I have seen product managers who sometimes like go so deep into like tiny aspects of design, and that actually makes the designer very uncomfortable. And because you are encroaching my space.
Right.
And I've also seen product managers who are like way up, like totally vague. They give you like one line
That's
requirement.
another extreme.
That's the other extreme, right? So you need to find a happy medium between these two extremes. So I've seen designers, they thrive when they find a partner. Same with product managers also. As a product manager, I would expect the person to have certain vision for what they want to do, what they want to achieve. What is that they are building, rather than totally being vague and just play along the way, like, just build it along the way. No, I would expect a product manager to have certain goals, certain vision, and so on, and at the same time partner with design in bringing out the best experience for whatever vision that they are trying to do. And in terms of discovery, I would expect both of them to be together, talking to customers, talking to doing all the research, taking notes, and identifying all the problems from whatever they have captured so far,
Correct.
and identifying and narrowing down on MVP as well, right? So it's a joint effort in my view.
So, so all the artifacts are in a shared place where both of them
Yes,
collaborate and stuff like that. Okay.
yes, yes, yeah.
How many product managers are there, by the way, for your teams? For you, like if you have to map with your designers, like how many in Singapore? So, do you is your scope limited to Singapore, or you also like work have designers outside Singapore? Or
So I have designers in Singapore, San Francisco, and Dublin.
for
Uh,
your team?
For my team, yes,
Okay,
yeah. So I have designers located in three different places. I
got
mean,
it.
within US, we have some remote designers, but
Okay,
primarily San Francisco, Dublin, and Singapore.
yeah,
And it also means then product managers in all the three locations.
yeah.
Um, but the current situation is we have more product managers and less designers.
Yes, designers. Okay,
While I would expect like a 1-to-1 ratio, but we are not there yet.
right.
Um, so yeah. So what exactly was your question? Going back to your question.
Yeah, so I was just trying to understand the first of all the ratio design and PMs, and then if the designers are less, sometimes the PMs have to do the heavy lifting if they lack the designers backing discovery, isn't it? Is that how it
Yeah,
is? Yeah,
that is true. That is true. Like when there is no designer assigned, and if the product manager themselves are doing, then yeah, it has to be done by them.
yeah,
What we try to do is we try to like carve out some time from the designers to
right,
actually talk to them. It's not totally PM on their own, but at
right,
least spend a couple of hours every week to collaborate and give feedback and
right.
partner.
So, what kind of product managers have you enjoyed working with the most? Like, what are some of the traits that you see is an effective product manager? I mean, you have had vast experience both in Autodesk here. How do you shape that?
I think I touched upon it a little bit earlier, like totally hands off, and
Mm,
then uh, too much into like um, too close into design and giving you feedback on pixels. Both of those are two extremes which designers don't enjoy.
mm,
Um, so if a product manager can be a good partner, have very clear understanding of what they want, rather
mm,
than leaving everything so vague. I mean, your goal is, for example, like my goal is onboarding. Like make sure that within certain clicks, I want my customer to be up and running with this. So have very clear goals and give certain metrics, and also have clarity on what success metrics look like,
mm.
right? So when when there is too much of this or too less of this, then that's a problem.
Right.
So yeah, in my view, a good product manager should have a good balance and be a good partner.
Got it. Yeah, I mean, at Autodesk, Amar Hanspal started as a product manager, isn't it? That's how he climbed up
Yes,
the ladder. Yeah, so I
yes, yeah.
admire him. Um, so, do you strictly write success metrics for your features?
Yes, yeah. I think there are times when people don't, it gets left out as well. But for at least bigger initiatives, strategic initiatives, definitely there are success metrics that need to be put down on paper when you are defining a feature.
How do you define it for the UX effort? How do you measure the success of the UX effort? Like, do you have something in place, some process in place?
Currently, we don't, but that is a topic of discussion.
Okay.
We I mean, I think there are different models available, different frameworks available. I think Google came up with something called
Heart framework.
Heart, yeah,
Yeah.
Heart framework. So different models are available, but I haven't seen one that we adopted and we stuck to it. I know at Autodesk we did a variation of Heart, if I'm not wrong, but it didn't stick as far as I remember. So I don't know what it is today. But at Zendesk, this is a conversation that's currently we are having. We have success metrics for product, like
Mm,
what exactly a feature would look like if it is successful after we ship. However, we don't have specific success metrics for design. That's something that's work in progress.
got it. All right. So I'm being mindful of time here. This was meant for 1.5 hours. We're almost last to the last minute. But usually, I dig deep dive into this meteor segment, which is case studies. So maybe of your vast experience, can you pick one example, one as a product or a feature that has been the most challenging to deliver in your career, and what were the biggest lessons from that experience? Do you have something that comes to your mind?
Um, Yeah, I don't remember a lot of specifics, but I do know one of the projects. Probably you were around at that time. It was the AutoCAD modernization effort that we did.
Yes, yes, I was.
So that was one of those. You know the release cadence. I don't know what it is today at Autodesk, but when we both used to work, the release cadence is we ship the product in March, and then we start work on the next release, and then you work till December or so, like November, December. Then coding stops, and all
You
sort of.
you hire a lot of freshers just to do testing in the December month. Remember?
Uh,
But that
Possible,
was,
or
yeah,
it could be, yeah, possible,
yeah, yeah.
yeah. Um, so we have this cycle, and that was a cycle that we were following at Autodesk at that time. Even though we were all on agile and so on,
Right,
so we were doing this big AutoCAD modernization project, and modernization was not just changing the skin,
right.
but also the background of the engine behind the canvas, right?
The architecture, yeah.
Architecture as well, right? So it was a huge effort. It was a multi-year effort. It was happening for some time, and we were planning to release it in that particular release that we were working on. I don't remember exactly specific month until I think September or so. We decided, you know what, the path we are taking now, we are not going to be able to ship a product that is decent enough, that doesn't have performance issues, that doesn't crash, and so on. So the entire AutoCAD team, they actually decided, you know what, we are pausing our current release. And
Wow. After how many months of effort?
probably like, March, April, May, June, July, August, September, like 6 7 months of effort, right?
Wow.
So they paused the release, and they come up with code names for every release. They
Right.
came up with a new code name and a new project, and they took on a lighter version of modernization, and they shipped it on time,
Oh, wow.
right?
Hmm.
So that was, if someone has to look for a stellar engineering team, I would definitely say AutoCAD team. Like, you just please go and see what they have done, because they're not a typical software development. They have their own processes, they have their own test metrics, and so on. So that was a very, very challenging thing. So basically, whatever designs, whatever code that we did, all were paused, and we started from scratch, and we worked towards shipping a decent release as expected in the month of March, and we did it. So that is a true, what to say. There are a few things that I need to call out, like leadership not being afraid of making huge changes.
Yeah.
It's like a calculated risk. Teamwork at its best,
Right.
everyone coming together, and agility. Like, for such a huge company and a huge organization, having that agility is commendable, I would say. So yeah, those were some of the things that comes to my mind about that release. It was a significant release, actually.
Excellent. I forgot to ask you one important question, which is conflict of opinions between UX and PM. Okay, are there any rules of thumb when UX, the designer and the PM disagree on something? How do you resolve it without getting it escalated? What has been your opinion?
So
Have you had experiences, anyways? Have you
we
had
always
always?
we always have it. It's not have you had. How many of you had? Have you had a project
How
where
many
you
have you
don't?
had?
So I think if you have your vision established, if you have the vision for your feature or the initiative that you're working on,
Right.
if both of you agree on what is the end goal, and what are some of those criteria, success criteria, it could be experience criteria. If you have laid down all of those in the beginning, so when you have a conflict, you can actually refer back and try to solve it yourself.
Right.
Um, I definitely don't like when there are times when product managers say, "Oh, I don't like this UI," but why? They won't be able to justify it or
Articulated. Yeah.
quantify it, right? So,
Articulated. Yeah.
so yeah, be very objective,
Mm.
and don't give subjective comments and feedback. Same goes for designers as well. Like if they are disagreeing to a particular approach, be specific. Why do you think it's bad for an experience? Justify it and back it up with data, back it up with research. So those are some of the things that will help you resolve conflicts.
Excellent. Well, this brings us to an end of a fascinating conversation with Lux. Lux, I think this is the deepest I have conversed about design. I don't think even with Ranjit, I don't think we got this deep. And you were very very open and willing to share everything. Not everybody is willing to share everything. Like people keep the tricks of their trade within their own pockets. But you were quite generous to share so much of wealth of wisdom with me. So thank you for that, Lux. I think the audience, whoever listens to this, they are going to benefit greatly from all the content that you just shared.
Thanks for having me, Ravi. I've always admired you. You are, high energy. I really don't know from where you get all the energy. So keep going, and thanks for talking to me.
Thank you. You
Bye.
have a good rest of the weekend.
Thanks. You too.